Read this after finding a safe place to take refuge. A week after my 75-year-old father's accidental demise, a letter arrived unexpectedly. Enclosed were 6 keys and a paper indicating the location of a safe deposit box. The message contained only the directive to open the door. I proceeded to unlock all 6 locations, only to discover a truth so harrowing it made me want to cover my ears. With clenched fists, I set out on a path of revenge against a certain individual. To find out how this gruesome tale unfolds, read on until the end. I am Lisa Watson, 45 years old. My father was the president of a welfare-related company, and I heard that my mother passed away when I was still a baby. As a result, I have no memories of her. The only thing that allows me to feel her presence is a custom-made pair of necklaces that my father had crafted to match hers. Each pendant is designed to form a heart shape when the two are combined. However, it seems my mother's necklace was lost long ago, and the one I have in my possession is the one my father bequeathed to me. As an only child, I married Michael, who works at my father's company, 20 years ago. He is known as a capable employee, and at the time, people around us said things like, "Now the company is secure." As a homemaker, I enjoy solving puzzles, something my father loved, while maintaining a comfortable life at home. However, things weren't going smoothly. Before we got married, Michael was kind and gentle, but after we tied the knot, his attitude gradually changed. "Welcome home. I'll prepare dinner right away, so wait."
I ate out, so I don't need anything. I'm going to bed.
But we haven't really talked lately. I feel lonely. I confessed, and then he retorted,
You're acting all cute, and it's disgusting. I hate that kind of thing.
With an angry tone, he crawled into bed. His behavior toward me grew colder each day, and discussing starting a family became impossible. As a result, we remained childless, and by the time I turned 40, I had given up on having children. To make matters worse, 3 years ago, Michael started coming home extremely late, always reeking of sweet perfume. One day, I couldn't help but ask, "Michael, you're not cheating on me, are you?"
I just go to hostess clubs for business. It's part of my job. Don't complain.
But I began, only to be met with a sharp pain on my cheek. Michael raised his hand, trembling like a demon, bloodshot eyes fixed on me. I stood frozen, like a deer in headlights, unable to utter another word.
Anyway, a carefree housewife like you shouldn't meddle in my affairs. Got it?
At that moment, with no work experience to speak of, I had no choice but to remain silent. However, my father often used to say,
"Even without hostesses or alcohol, you can build trust with business partners."
Because of this, I had reservations about my husband's behavior. So, I confided in James, who was my father's close associate. James, a year younger than me, was like a comforting younger brother when we were together. He listened earnestly to my concerns while maintaining an appropriate distance. James held a high position in my father's estimation, and he occasionally visited our home for work-related matters. One day, I asked him, "James, what do you think about business partners going to hostess clubs?" His response was measured.
Times change, and so do people's approaches to work.
True, thank you. I feel better now.
If you ever need help, don't hesitate to ask.
James assured me. His calm demeanor encouraged me not to dwell on the matter further. However, life took a dramatic turn shortly afterward. It happened 1 month ago. The morning after my husband left for an overnight business trip, I received a call from the police. My beloved father had passed away in an accident. When I arrived, he was already in the mortuary, appearing as if he were merely asleep. Following that, the police were in a frenzy as they arrived, along with the husband, my father's close associate James, and several company executives. Why would this happen? Please tell me everything, I implored tearfully. The investigating officer informed me that my father had jumped from a desolate cliff. Furthermore, traces of sleeping pills were found in his system, and his abandoned 7-seater car was nearby. Inside the car, they discovered a neatly typed suicide note. The letter contained the words, "I'm exhausted," and it left the position of the company president in the hands of my husband, Michael. Although it wasn't handwritten, James explained that my father often created memos on his computer, so a typed note wasn't unusual. Based on their experience, the police speculated that my father might have taken the pills to cloud his consciousness before leaping. James wasn't present at the time. No witnesses had come forward yet.
I sincerely apologize, despite being in the position of a close associate.
Tears welled up in his eyes, but he managed to hold back. Even my usually cold husband, Michael, gently embraced my shoulder during this difficult moment. However, my father, who presided over a large number of employees, left behind an abundance of tasks for those who remained. In the days that followed, chaos reigned within the company. For now, my husband assumed the role of president, and James seamlessly transitioned into his right-hand man. Meanwhile, I found myself caught up in handling matters related to relatives and acquaintances. Times like these make me wish I had a sibling, I thought. As an only child, having lost both my parents and feeling a vague sense of loneliness despite my husband's presence, I grappled with my emotions. 1 week had passed since my father's departure from this world when a letter arrived addressed to me. Inside the envelope was another, bearing the cryptic message, "Read this after finding a safe place." Curiosity piqued. I opened it immediately. 6 keys and a slip of paper with the location of a safe deposit box spilled out. A single note accompanied them. "Open all the doors. Only then will you discover the truth." Recalling my father's love for puzzles and feeling the weight of our shared bloodline, I found a glimmer of relief amidst my melancholy. Intriguing, I thought. From that day on, between household chores, I visited 6 different safe deposit boxes, unlocking each one. What unfolded was beyond my wildest expectations. Could this be real? I gasped, unraveling a truth that sent shivers down my spine. And as the events of the past played out like a flickering lantern in my mind, tears traced down my cheeks. I can't stay idle, even if it leads to a heartbreaking conclusion, I resolved. With my beloved's feelings weighing on my shoulders, I set forth. One day, a month after my father's funeral, my husband returned home unusually early and offered me wine. It was a gesture he had never made before. "Well, this is unusual. What's the occasion?"
Actually, James mentioned that you like wine, so he gave it to me.
"Really?" I said, surprised. When my husband pulled out the bottle, I did wonder what was going on. However, I indeed had a palate for both red and white wines, having conversed about wine with James before.
James really knows everything about our family, doesn't he?
With that, he disappeared into the kitchen, carrying the bottle and opener. He returned to the living room with a glass of wine in hand.
I still have some work to do, so go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. Hold on a moment. I want to prepare some snacks. I retreated to the kitchen, busying myself with preparations before returning to my seat. Cheers. I said, raising my glass to take a sip. My husband's expression twisted, and he squinted at me. Seeing his reaction out of the corner of my eye, I couldn't help but smile inwardly. 1 hour later, my husband scrutinized my face suspiciously.
Hey, has anything changed?
Not really. Oh, wait, is it because I'm still awake? Surprising, isn't it?
Huh? What are you talking about? I was just...
Enough with the act. You drugged the wine with sleeping pills, planned to drive me somewhere, and then throw me off a cliff like my dad. But it won't work. In truth, I had been investigating my husband's room until this day. I found a bottle of sleeping pills hidden in his desk drawer. I discreetly replaced the pills with identical-looking supplements and returned them to their original place. His feigned trip to pour wine in the kitchen was actually an opportunity to mix the sleeping pills into the wine.
You! Why are you snooping around my things? Those pills are for when I can't sleep.
I don't need your transparent lies. Actually, something like this was sent to me recently. I dramatically spread out the letter and 6 keys on the table. I opened all the doors. Inside were thin papers with scattered words. I layered the 6 flimsy sheets, and lo and behold, they formed a complete sentence. The one who killed the president is Michael Watson. Danger is also approaching you. Take a good look. I pointed at the finished message.
Who the hell sent this?
But the answer was about to be revealed. James, his close associate, calmly stepped forward.
The sender was me.
Earlier, when I went to fetch snacks from the kitchen, I secretly messaged James and had him hide near the entrance.
I had doubts about the president's suicide. So, I discreetly investigated various aspects.
You were doing that?
The day after we learned about the former president's passing, you brought a woman to the president's office, right? I was nearby at the time.
And James added that he deduced from the conversation between Michael and the woman at that time that my husband had killed my father in order to take over the presidency. Upon the sudden revelation by his close associate, my husband couldn't help but roll his eyes and avert his gaze. I grabbed Michael's shoulders and shook him. And you were after my life just to get your hands on the entire fortune?
The woman seemed to think all those affairs were mere jokes, but I believed it was the truth.
He confessed that he had no concrete evidence until he could consult the police, but he wanted to inform me somehow. Hence, he chose to send a letter. However, my husband remained defiant.
Why are you blindly believing what this guy says?
Taking a deep breath, I decided to reveal the hidden truth. Actually, I began, ready to share the untold revelation. Once upon a time, my dad fell in love with my mom, who grew up in a children's foster care facility. However, due to strict parents, their marriage faced opposition. In the end, they married without consent, and I was born.
What does that have to do with anything now?
Please listen to the whole story.
James interjected. My husband, wearing a stern expression, reluctantly took a seat nearby. However, during my dad's absence on a business trip, his strict parents initiated divorce proceedings without consent, leaving only my mom to be expelled from the house.
Huh? But I thought she had passed away.
That was a lie concocted to conceal our family secret. I revealed. Apparently, my mother, pressured by my father's parents, tearfully withdrew when they told her.
A future president's wife with someone like you would tarnish our family reputation.
To make matters worse, I, then just 1.5 years old, was forcibly separated from my reluctant mother, all for a selfish reason, to be the heir presumptive in case my father didn't have any male grandchildren in the future. Furthermore, my father was fed a false story by his parents.
Your wife left you after having an affair.
But the truth was different. No wonder my husband muttered.
I had no idea about the president's past.
Understandably, this was a closely guarded secret known only to a select few relatives. I had only recently learned about it myself. Now, here's the most crucial part.
What? Is there more? Stop dragging it out and just tell me.
Frustrated, he raised his voice. Ignoring his impatience, I glanced at a certain person. In fact, at that time, my mom was already pregnant with another child. That child is now sitting right next to you, James.
Wait, so you two are siblings?
James nodded silently. My mother, who had been cast aside, suffered from poor health and remained bedridden. Meanwhile, my father, unable to accept the betrayal of the woman he loved, never remarried and tirelessly searched for my mother's whereabouts. 30 years have passed. My father visited a rundown apartment. Dad finally found Mom's whereabouts. However, she was critically ill. They reunited briefly before she passed away. At that moment, James and his father each discovered for the first time that James's company president was his own father, while his father learned that he had a son.
My mother hoped I'd pursue a socially impactful career, so I chose to work in the welfare sector at this company.
James joining the company was purely coincidental, but perhaps our mom orchestrated our connection. James, his eyes welling up, revealed that my father had once considered promoting him to a high-ranking position and publicly acknowledging their relationship. However, James declined, wanting to forge his own path.
Revealing this would cause a stir, and Mom wouldn't have wanted that. Besides, I want to succeed on my own terms.
Despite rejecting my father's offer, James's exceptional abilities led him to become the president's trusted right-hand man, even without nepotism. The truth had finally come full circle.
On my mother's monthly Memorial Day, the president would unfailingly visit my home to share memories of my mother.
And he was planning to come over the day before his fatal accident, right?
Yes. But for some reason, he didn't show up without any notice. It was unlike him.
According to James, my father always called when plans changed. However, this sudden silence struck James as unnatural. As he delved deeper, he uncovered evidence pointing to my husband as the culprit. That's why he sent me that cryptic letter.
It's all nonsense. Where's the proof that he's the president's son? Who would believe such a fabricated story?
Michael's anger flared, directed at both of us. Naturally, I didn't blindly accept James's account. I had seen irrefutable proof of our sibling relationship. Hey, can you show it? I asked. James took out a necklace, which had been lost a long time ago, from his pocket. He had been keeping it carefully since our mother passed away. When combined with the one I have, it forms a heart, and it is undoubtedly the one that our father and mother had custom made. Is this just a coincidence? Doesn't this prove James is my brother?
Even if it does, people lie. Besides, there's no guarantee.
If you doubt it, we can do a DNA test with our father, I asserted. Since my father had recently passed away, there were plenty of heirlooms suitable for testing. My unwavering confidence seemed to unsettle my husband. Suddenly, he crumpled a thin piece of paper with a coded message.
Why did he go to such elaborate lengths?
Well, that was to ensure that even if you stumbled upon it, you wouldn't easily recognize it. James had discerned that Michael, despite appearing competent at work, had a tendency to delegate inconvenient tasks to others. So, as a precaution, he assumed that even if Michael found this letter, he would assign it to a trusted subordinate. Interestingly, knowing my penchant for puzzles, James believed I would decipher the message.
This trick was something the president devised during his lifetime. He'd proudly say, "How's that? Quite clever, isn't it?"
Come to think of it, my dad always jotted down interesting ideas.
He once mentioned wanting his daughter to tackle a mystery like this.
And so, with this backstory, my brother and I learned of my husband's crime. Over time, we meticulously searched for clues in his room. We discovered evidence that he had fabricated a false suicide note on his computer. Additionally, James checked Michael's motorcycle ride history using an app. It revealed a one-way trip from the accident site back home. "You loaded the motorcycle onto the car, pushed my dad off the cliff, and then used the bike to return home," I exclaimed. Recalling the day before my father's demise, my husband claimed to be on a business trip. However, according to James, there was no such task. "Your marriage to me was probably just about money and status." On the day when Michael secretly brought his affair partner into the president's office, James discreetly followed the woman. It turned out that she was a hostess from a cabaret club. Later, James infiltrated the club undercover. The woman, smitten with James, readily spilled the truth. "Why harm my dad at all?"
I couldn't wait until the old man kicked the bucket.
Despite Michael's repeated attempts to retire, my father adamantly refused. It seemed my husband couldn't bear to wait for his demise. His selfishness ignited a fiery rage within me. "We'll share our findings with the police and request a reinvestigation."
But you haven't reported it yet. Could it be because you still care about me?
My husband retorted, spouting nonsensical excuses even at this point. James, equally baffled, remained silent. "Going to the police would have resolved it through the legal system, wouldn't it? But I wanted to take matters into my own hands and avenge our dad." When I confessed my inner turmoil, Michael finally seemed to grasp the situation he was in. He apologized tearfully on the spot. Michael's face was a mess of tears and runny nose as he looked up at me. His body trembled uncontrollably. However, neither I nor my brother had any intention of forgiving Michael, who had sent our father to the afterlife. "What you've done is a serious crime."
But please forgive me.
"Prepare to experience despair."
No!
Afterward, with James's assistance, I handed the sobbing Michael over to the police. In the subsequent interrogation, Michael admitted to taking our father's life. With the intervention of a lawyer between him and me, the divorce was finalized. The $20,000 compensation was paid from his savings. According to reports, Michael, now confined behind bars, appears to be a mere shell of his former self. The woman, aware of his marital status, had an affair with him, and she has also demanded alimony of $10,000. Meanwhile, James, publicly acknowledged as the president's biological son, has assumed the role of the president, his past accomplishments duly recognized. I'll be assisting with administrative tasks at the company. From now on, my brother and I will join forces to uphold the legacy our father left behind.
How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time in our next video.
Today, my grandson Josh said he would help with cooking. Although I've served the dishes I've made before, we haven't cooked together much, so I was really looking forward to it. Since he's only 4 years old, I entrusted him with making hamburger patties. To my surprise, Josh skillfully shaped the patties. Just like my son did, I imagine Josh learned to cook by emulating his father's example. The hamburger we carefully made together looked even more delicious than usual. Since Kenny was running late due to a busy work period, Maria and Josh and I decided to have our meal first. On the dining table, besides the hamburgers, there were other treats like salad, soup, and dessert, all of which Josh had helped prepare. Josh looked content as he gazed at the appetizing dishes, and I couldn't help but feel joy seeing him like that.
I wonder if Mom and Dad will be happy?
With an excited expression, Josh inquired. Oh, they'll definitely be overjoyed. As we chatted, the intercom at home rang. It seemed Maria had arrived. Josh and I welcomed Maria with smiles. Maria's expression darkened, and she glared at me as she entered. Josh's face, which had been sparkling just a moment ago, clouded over. Maria completely ignored us, strode into the room, and then did something unbelievable. She glanced quickly at the dishes lined up on the table, only to discard them directly into the trash can right in front of her.
Who would eat something made by a sick person? I don't want to risk getting infected.
The words directed at me when I was temporarily discharged were hurtful. Maria, with a half-smile, spat out profanities that hardly resembled a parent. Faced with such appalling behavior, I was left speechless and stunned. At that moment, it was the young Josh who extended a helping hand to me. I am Kathy McGregor. Having reached retirement age, I am enjoying a leisurely time away from work. As I sip my morning coffee, memories from the past come flooding back. I have a son, Kenny. Although it may be hard to imagine from my current lifestyle, until Kenny reached adulthood, those were days when there was no time to rest. This was because, in my mid-30s, my husband suddenly passed away due to illness, leaving me as the sole caregiver for Kenny. Having moved to the city after marriage, there were no close relatives nearby to lend a helping hand. Since I had already purchased a house, I couldn't easily return to my hometown. The mortgage payments were still pending. So, without much time to dwell on my sadness, I worked tirelessly from morning till night. Still, I made a conscious effort to spend time with Kenny, ensuring he didn't feel too lonely. Kenny occasionally cried, but even at his young age, he understood the situation and became my source of comfort. On Kenny's days off, we spent time together, going to places he wanted to visit. We talked about various topics, from school to our favorite dishes. Sometimes, after school or on days when Kenny had no classes, he would come to my workplace, and we'd spend time together until I finished work. Of course, I had obtained permission from my workplace, and it was where everyone showed understanding towards me as a single mother. When I was too busy to attend to things, my colleagues would talk to Kenny during breaks or help him with his homework, and it seemed like Kenny was enjoying himself.
Mom, what's for dinner tonight?
Whether it was a school day or a day when we commuted home together from my workplace, Kenny always asked me this question. He later told me that he enjoyed helping with dinner preparations from a young age because he liked the dishes I made. It all began with tearing lettuce for salads, mixing potato salad, and preparing sauces. Kenny found joy in cooking with me and accomplishing tasks independently. I remember his eyes shining as he stood in the kitchen every day. The saying "what one likes, one will do well" seems to hold true. Although he went through a rebellious phase in high school, I consistently prepared lunch for him and handed it over. Even on days when we argued, he would still return the lunch container neatly cleaned. Perhaps Kenny's rebellious phase was relatively mild after all. Looking back, I realized that the lunch I had made was one form of communication for us. On the last day of high school, Kenny returned his lunchbox with a note saying thank you, Mom, for everything. I couldn't help but cry alone at that time. Kenny's passion for cooking remained strong even as he grew up, and he chose to go to a culinary school after graduation. My son, who graduated from culinary school in no time, steadily honed his skills at a famous restaurant. Now, he was independent as a chef and owned his own restaurant. From the reviews, it seems that phrases like a dish that makes you feel nostalgic, simple and friendly, yet unique are written, and it seems that the homely taste is very popular and thriving. Occasionally, I also take my friends to Kenny's restaurant. When he sees me, he always gives me a shy smile. I'm proud of how well he's grown up, even though he's my own son. Of course, there were tough times, but seeing Kenny thriving like this makes me happy and proud. Kenny got married early. Despite complaining that business owners have no time off and no opportunities to meet people, it's a wonder when exactly it happened. His wife, Maria, was initially just a customer at the restaurant Kenny manages. However, Maria fell in love with Kenny's cooking and became a regular visitor to the restaurant. Eventually, she even gave him her contact information, and their relationship began. Although Kenny had initially decided not to get involved with customers, he couldn't resist Maria's enthusiasm and decided to exchange contact details. Since they started dating, the two of them would visit my house together, and Kenny would treat us to his cooking. The three of us would chat while enjoying meals, and that was our delight at the time.
I'll take care of it.
With those words, Maria would take the initiative to do the dishes after the meal. Oh, it's fine. Please have a seat. You're our guest. Would Maria get along well with my son? Before meeting her, I had some concerns, but I also took a liking to Maria, who seemed refined and well-mannered. After dating for 2 years, the two of them got married and became a couple. On their wedding day, Kenny and I both shed tears, and our relatives laughed. It's a cherished memory. However, little did I know that our relationship as mother-in-law and daughter-in-law would remain smooth sailing only until that moment. The moment I began to feel uneasy about Maria's behavior was approximately 6 months after Kenny and I got married. On that day, Maria arrived carrying a luxury brand handbag that even someone like me, who is not well-versed in designer items, recognized. It was hard to imagine that Maria, a full-time homemaker, would purchase such an expensive item for herself. If that's the case, Kenny must have been the one who bought it. As long as the two of them are content and have a good relationship, it's not my place to criticize from the sidelines. With that thought in mind, I refrained from saying anything to Maria at the time.
Since we got married, Maria has started asking for things more often. It used to be that I had to ask her if there was anything she wanted.
But then, it was different. It all began with cosmetics from the department store, and gradually, the cost of her requests was increasing. Every weekend, she went to the department store and splurged on luxury brand items using Kenny's credit card. Was she trying to show off our wealth as the wife of a business owner? That was the impression I was getting from Kenny's stories. Not only that, Kenny often came home late from work, so he would have probably liked to delegate some household chores. However, Maria spent most of her time on her smartphone and didn't do much cleaning or tidying up, resulting in a messy house. Even when it came to cooking, she refused to try.
Your cooking is better.
Of course, Kenny is a chef, so what he made is likely delicious. But the lack of motivation from the outset was hard to accept. Even if she lacked confidence in cooking, putting her heart into it would surely convey her feelings to her partner. While we were talking, Kenny maintained a brave demeanor, but his voice seemed somewhat lacking in energy, indicating fatigue. No wonder. He likely had no time to rest, juggling dinner preparations and room cleaning after returning home tired. Kenny, who was clearly overwhelmed, deserved sympathy. I resolved to inform Maria about Kenny's struggles the next time I saw her. That moment arrived sooner than expected, just 1 week after Kenny's arrival. Maria, accompanied by Kenny, was once again dressed impeccably today. As we sat down for tea, I subtly broached the topic. "Maria, how have you been lately? Kenny seems a bit tired. If you could help out a little more with household chores, I'm sure it would be a great relief for him." I gently reminded Maria. She looked at me with surprise in her eyes. "Well, recently I've been leaving everything to him, so I'll also do my best with household chores." I had hoped for those words in response, but reality turned out to be far less sweet. Her expression twisted, and before long, she burst into tears.
This is terrible. I'm also doing my best with what I can. Kenny doesn't come home until late, and it's lonely. To be told something like that.
She neither denied her past actions nor apologized for them. Seeing Maria cry like a helpless victim, I felt like sighing. While it was true that her anxiety stemmed from Kenny not coming home until late, wasn't it a bit excessive to avoid all household chores and indulged in wastefulness? Kenny said,
"All right, we'll leave now. Sorry, Mom, and thank you for today."
As he comforted the still crying Maria, and the two of them headed back home. Since that incident, Maria's visits to my house dramatically decreased. Sometimes, when she made an appearance, Maria would wear a slightly annoyed expression even when I tried to join the conversation. Kenny would apologize.
"I'm sorry for making you feel uncomfortable. I'll talk to Maria about it."
Kenny kept repeating such apologies. Our relationship was deteriorating, and an awkward atmosphere persisted for about 2 months. But then, one day, a bright piece of news came our way. Maria was pregnant. Kenny had wanted children even before they got married. Naturally, I was overjoyed, especially since this meant I would soon become a grandmother. The two of us celebrated with great excitement.
"I have work, so I can't be with Maria all the time. There might be times when I need your help, Mom. It might be a burden, but I appreciate your assistance."
Kenny bowed his head toward me. If it's about taking care of my grandchild, I was more than willing to help. Although I felt a little uneasy about Maria's relationship with Kenny, I was sure she would find her footing once she became a mother. Afterward, her once inconspicuous belly swelled until it seemed ready to burst, and Maria finally gave birth to her first child. Maria's first childbirth took time, but I was relieved to hear that both mother and child were healthy. From pregnancy to postpartum, I supported them with household chores and childcare as much as I could. Many things I had forgotten about parenting resurfaced, and at times, it felt challenging. However, being blessed with an angelic and adorable grandson made me truly happy. Maria continued to be demanding, as usual. She asked me to buy things and prepare diapers. But seeing how she doted on her newborn son, Josh, put my mind at ease. As time passed, Josh turned 4 years old. While my son's growth was rapid, my grandson, whom I didn't see every day, seemed to grow significantly each time we met. Josh, who used to wobble as he took his first steps, then ran around the park freely. He shared stories about his experiences at daycare and the fun things he did. As Josh continued to grow, I still supported with household chores and childcare, often bustling around Kenny's house. Then, part of my responsibilities included picking him up from kindergarten. Maria, on the other hand, frequently left the house, leaving me to handle everything that a wife and mother should typically do. Maria often told me,
Josh is happy to see you, too, Grandma.
Spending time with Josh was my solace, and it remained incredibly enjoyable. However, as someone over 60 years old, I did find it a bit challenging. On days when Josh didn't attend daycare, I woke up early to prepare breakfast for Maria and Josh, handle cleaning and laundry, and took Josh out to play. By early afternoon, I returned home, and the routine included grocery shopping for dinner. As those days continued, I found myself feeling more physically tired by the end of each day. The relentless days without rest may have taken their toll. One day, while on my way to pick up Josh from daycare, I collapsed. Fortunately, it was a busy street, and a passerby called for emergency assistance. I had dismissed it as mere exhaustion, assuming it wasn't anything serious. However, I ended up being hospitalized unexpectedly. They discovered cancer. Due to the delayed diagnosis, a major surgery became necessary. Looking back, I occasionally felt discomfort such as shortness of breath and palpitations. However, I attributed it to my age and didn't visit the hospital. After all, I had never suffered from any major illnesses in my entire life. I ignored the minor physical discomforts in my small body. Besides, with so many tasks to handle, I put myself second. It was ironic that I neglected my health even though falling ill would be detrimental. Regretting it was futile. Although I had numerous worries, I've decided to focus on treating my illness. Since I was hospitalized, Kenny often visited me with Josh during work breaks.
Mom, I'm sorry. Did I push you too hard?
Kenny apologized with a remorseful expression every time he visited. No need to apologize. I did it willingly. I assured him that there was no need for apologies.
Still, I'm sorry.
Despite my reassurance, Kenny continued to wear a sad smile. It's heartwarming to see Kenny's concern during my hospital stay. On the other hand, Maria had not visited me even once since I was hospitalized, citing her busy work schedule. I had heard that Maria started working as a part-timer, so I didn't pay much attention. Being a part-timer could vary in terms of workload, and she probably needed time to unwind. Besides, given the lingering awkward atmosphere, I could imagine that visiting me would be uncomfortable for her. No, it was much better that she hadn't come to visit. Rather than dwelling on such matters, Josh's heartfelt get well letter was far more precious to me.
Here, Grandma. This is the letter I wrote.
Josh, thank you. I'm truly happy. Despite being only 4 years old, Josh grew up to be remarkably intelligent. He could already write letters by himself. The letter read, "Get well soon." I envisioned him diligently writing the letter, thinking of me. Throughout my battle with illness, I was supported by my son and grandchild who cared for me. After a successful surgery, I finally received temporary discharge from the hospital after about 2 weeks. Although my body still didn't move as I'd like, being back home feels much more comfortable and calming than the hospital. During my hospital stay, I felt that Kenny was constantly worried about me and stayed by my side. While we were originally close as parent and child, it had been a while since we had a heartfelt conversation. Kenny enthusiastically shared stories with me, ranging from the restaurant's new menu to business matters. In turn, he genuinely listened to my stories, I could not express how much Kenny's attentive listening lifted my spirits. To show my gratitude, I decided to treat Kenny and the others at home to hamburgers. Hamburgers have always been Kenny's favorite, and they happen to be one of my signature dishes. I had already made up my mind to prepare them once I returned home. Whether it was after a performance or an exam, I always cooked this memorable menu for Kenny on days when he had worked hard. And that day, Josh would also be helping with the cooking. If I was returning, Maria entrusted Josh to me without hesitation. Although I'd served the dishes I'd made before, we hadn't cooked together much, so I was really looking forward to it. Since he was only 4 years old, I entrusted him with making hamburger patties. To my surprise, Josh skillfully shaped the patties. Just like my son did, I imagined Josh learned to cook by emulating his father's example. While being cautious about burns, Josh and I worked together to grill hamburgers. Once we plated them with tomatoes and lettuce, they were ready. The hamburger we carefully made together looked even more delicious than usual. Since Kenny was running late due to a busy work period, Maria and Josh and I decided to have our meal first. On the dining table, besides the hamburgers, there were other treats like salad, soup, and dessert, all of which Josh had helped prepare. Josh looked content as he gazed at the appetizing dishes, and I couldn't help but feel joy seeing him like that.
I wonder if Mom and Dad will be happy?
With an excited expression, Josh inquired. Oh, they'll definitely be overjoyed. As we chatted, the intercom at home rang. It seemed Maria had arrived. Josh and I welcomed Maria with smiles. However, Maria's expression darkened, and she glared at me as she entered. Josh's face, which had been sparkling just a moment ago, clouded over. Maria completely ignored us, strode into the room, and then did something unbelievable. She glanced quickly at the dishes lined up on the table, only to discard them directly into the trash can right in front of her.
Who would eat something made by a sick person? I don't want to risk getting infected.
The words directed at me when I was temporarily discharged were hurtful. Maria, with a half-smile, spat out profanities that hardly resembled a parent. Faced with such appalling behavior, I was left speechless and stunned. At that moment, it was the young Josh who extended a helping hand to me. However, once her emotions had escalated, it was unlikely that she would readily accept Josh's words.
Huh? Josh, say it again. Don't mess around.
Maria was furious, yelling at Josh with intense anger, but Josh remained calm.
Well, you always just reheated prepackaged food, right? Even I could know it. The food Grandma makes is truly delicious because it's made with love.
As far as Josh could remember, Maria had never cooked anything from scratch. Josh was at the age when he became interested in food. However, he understood that his mother struggled with cooking. Although he had many things he wanted to eat, he refrained from complaining and ate instant meals to avoid troubling Maria. Even as a child, he seemed to grasp that his eating habits were not typical, likely influenced by stories from his friends. Yet, he never communicated this to Maria. Nevertheless, this time, due to an exceptionally hurtful remark, he couldn't bear it any longer. Josh continued to speak to Maria with an expression of anger.
And you know what, Mom? Grandma used to be a chef before you and Dad got married. Dad told me that Grandma taught him how to cook.
That's true. I used to work as a chef in a renowned traditional restaurant. Like Kenny, I graduated from culinary school and worked in restaurants for a long time, eventually rising to the position of head chef. I never shared this with Josh or Maria, so Kenny must have told Josh about it.
So what? Just because she was a chef doesn't mean anything.
Maria seemed surprised upon hearing this for the first time, but she quickly reverted to her previous tone and attempted to scold Josh.
Disrespecting Grandma is the same as disrespecting Dad, isn't it?
What's with you? So cheeky.
Josh remained unfazed by Maria's words, staring at her with a cold, unyielding gaze. His tone, far beyond his 4 years, was matter-of-fact as he addressed Maria. It appeared he was finally unloading all the pent-up frustration he had accumulated. The argument between the two escalated, and I found myself unable to intervene. Every attempt to interject was met with a curt dismissal from Maria.
Stay quiet,
she snapped. As I pondered what to do, my attention was drawn to Maria's back. There, seemingly out of nowhere, stood Kenny. He had managed to finish his work early for my sake. As everyone present noticed Kenny, he finally spoke up.
Is that what a person with children does? Maria, apologize to your mother.
The chaotic mess of discarded dishes and our previous conversation. Kenny seemed to have heard and seen everything. His entire body trembled, revealing the strain of suppressed anger.
I've been patient all this time, but I've had enough of you. Let's get a divorce.
Upon hearing Kenny's words, Maria's expression changed dramatically from the earlier defiant glare.
No way. Don't take it seriously. That was just a joke.
Maria stumbled through her excuses, but Kenny regarded her with the same cold, calculating eyes he had used on Josh moments before. The tension in the room was palpable, and both Maria and I held our breath. Kenny pointed mercilessly at a discarded hamburger in the trash.
Then what's this?
Caught off guard by the exposed hamburger, Maria finally ran out of excuses.
Wait, I was wrong. I just vented my frustration. Please forgive me.
Maria's anguished voice echoed in the room, but there was no one here to defend her. With one last apology, Kenny and Maria left, and the scene came to an end. And so, my long day ended. Afterward, Kenny divorced Maria through a lawyer. The custody of Josh naturally went to Kenny. Considering Josh's upbringing environment up until now, it was determined that Kenny raising Josh would lead to Josh's happiness. As a result of the divorce, I ended up living in Kenny's house. Maria moved out on her own, and even when she packed up all her belongings, there were no words of apology. Initially, Josh showed signs of sadness at the prospect of his mother being gone. However, when we told him that we would be living together, he was genuinely delighted.
Grandma, let's cook together again. I'm looking forward to it.
A while after we started living together, Kenny heard a story. It turned out that Maria had been having an affair with a coworker. Despite working part-time, she had claimed to be busy with work, and now it made sense. Instead of Maria, who was indulging in infidelity, I was the one burdened to the point of physical strain. Kenny had suspected it, but considering Josh's well-being, he had tried to salvage the marriage and rebuild their relationship. As a restaurant owner, Kenny had worked tirelessly regardless of weekends, neglecting family time. He reflected on this and started taking time off to go out with the family. He also tried to communicate better as a couple, avoiding harboring resentment toward each other. However, Kenny's efforts were in vain, and Maria continued her affair. Kenny's words and actions didn't resonate with Maria, and her hostility toward me remained strong, leading to the incident. Kenny eventually gave up completely and decided to divorce. Later, it became clear that Maria had a personality that couldn't tolerate not being the number one priority. Frustrated with Kenny prioritizing work after marriage, she even resented me for doting on my grandchild. Feeling unloved by anyone, she turned to infidelity. Because Kenny worked hard for Maria, whom he loved, I felt sorry for her not realizing his actions. Maria, after property division and deducting alimony, was eventually abandoned by her affair partner as well. It seems he was just playing around. Now, she works multiple jobs day and night to pay child support. Does Maria regret her actions? We'll never know, but I hope she someday discovers true love. On the other hand, I worried about Josh being separated from his mother. However, Josh remained cheerful and actively helped me even without his mother around. Having endured hardships, I genuinely wanted to make Josh happy alongside Kenny. As for myself, perhaps due to no longer pushing myself too hard, my health had been steadily improving. I'd even started building up my strength and felt more energetic than before. "Grandma, what's for dinner tonight?" Josh asked me that question almost every day. As I answered, I couldn't help but see glimpses of Kenny from the past. "Tonight, we're having homemade hamburgers." I savored the happiness of living with my family of 3, and once again, I prepared dinner for them. How did you like this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, let's meet in the next video.